Hello and welcome to this project where we are going to build and deploy this beautiful personal portfolio website using HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript. In this project, we are going to learn how to build and deploy a full website using only HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And throughout the video, you are going to learn how to use CSS variables, how to align elements on your web page, how to use CSS grid system, how to use CSS flexbox, how to build websites with light and dark theme functionality, which also persists to the local storage. And at the end of the video, we are going to deploy the website and make sure it is available online for everyone to have access to. You will also learn about CSS animations, especially when we get to the testimonial section. We will have a scroll animation there. You will also learn how to build responsive websites, meaning websites that look good on desktop devices, tablets, and mobile phones. So now let me walk you through the demo of the live finished project. So this is the website we are going to build, and this is the website on a desktop or on a large device. And as you can see, it is very minimal and very beautiful. Of course, as you can see here, we have the dark theme functionality here. And so your viewers or your visitors can also view this in a dark theme if they want that. And as you can see, we have our profile image, we have our title and some description. We can click on this button to scroll us to our projects. We can come back using these navigation or this floating navigation right here. So instead of the usual nav bar, we are using this floating navigation right here. Okay, so we have the home, we have about, we have projects, we have testimonials, and as you can see, that's where we are going to use animations, okay, CSS animations and keyframes. And lastly, we have the contact section of the web page. Right, so let's come back, and here we have the profile image, we have a subtitle, our main title, and some description. We have our two call to action buttons, we have our socials here. So your visitors can of course click any of these socials to follow you or do whatever they want to do with your socials. We have the about section here. Okay, of course they can view your CV right here or your resume right here. And if you take a look, you can see that we have our picture. Okay, the picture of this person is right here in the fave icon right here on the title, and the title here is also in reference to the person. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do all this. And the dark theme also persists to local storage, and that means once the person or your visitors come back to the web page, the website is going to remember the theme that they chose. I hope that makes sense. All right, so let's go a little bit down, and there's the about section of the web page. Let's go down to the approach or the process that you take in creating your website. And so you can be more precise here, but that's what I have. And here I have my recent projects, and here of course, as you can see, they can click to view the live project, or they can see the source code on GitHub. So this is very simple, and of course this is where we use the grid system, which is very efficient for aligning cards or elements like this. Okay, and here is the testimonial section. As you can see, we have some testimonials from our clients. Okay, and as you can see, once I hover over the testimonials, you can see that it pauses, right? And we are going to use keyframes and some other techniques to actually achieve this look. Okay, we are going to use keyframes to achieve the scroll effect, and on hover we are going to change some things around to actually make the animations pause. I hope that makes sense. Now, the last section of the web page is the contact section. And of course, here your visitors can click on any of these buttons or icons to actually chat you directly. So here they can click to chat you directly on WhatsApp. So if your visitors have WhatsApp installed on their device, once they click, they are going to be able to chat you directly on WhatsApp without having to copy your number or anything like that. Okay, so same for the email. They can click to chat you directly via email, and with that, your email address is actually going to be populated in the to field of the message. I hope that makes sense. And same for the iMessage right here. Okay, so once your visitors come to your website and fill this form and click submit, they can actually send you a message and you will be able to receive that in your email. All right, so lastly, we have our footer section right here, which is very simple. And so we can go back to the home page right here. And so that is it for our website on the desktop. Now let's see how this looks on tablets and mobile phones. This is how the website looks on an iPad mini. As you can see, everything looks clean and responsive. Of course, our dark theme should be working here as well. Everything should be working exactly as expected. We can scroll to the about section and everything looks very neat. We have, the process or the approach section right here. We scroll down to the portfolio or the project section, and here we have the recent projects. We can scroll to the testimonials, and so here, as you can see, now we do not have the animation. Okay, so I intentionally did that just so you can know how to remove animations or have different style for different screen sizes. Okay, regardless of whether you have an animation on the large size, you can remove that animation and have a different style, a completely different style on a different screen size, right? So here for the testimonial, we do not have that scroll animation or that slide animation, but rather we have these grid layout. And here for the contact section, this is what we have as well. And finally, we have the footer section right here. So everything is looking neat, as you can see. And so let's go ahead and see how this is also going to look on a mobile device. And this is what we have right here. So of course we should have the dark theme working here as well. Perfect. So this is the about. We have the portfolio section or the recent projects. Of course, we have the approach section before the recent project section right here. We have the testimonial section, and finally the contact section. All right, so this is what we are going to build in this project, and I know you are going to learn a lot in this project, so let's just get started. Let's go ahead and set up our hosting and domain name. And having used or having worked with many hosting providers, the one that I always recommend for everyone is Hostinga. Now in the description of this video, you are going to find a link that's probably the first link that's going to bring you to this page. And that's an affiliate link that's going to give you the best deal for your hosting purchase. Okay, so go ahead and then click that link. That's going to bring you to this page. And if you visit this page and the design is a little different, that's because it changes from time to time, right? So this Hostinga, let's go ahead and then check out some of the hosting web hosting packages that they have. And right here is their premium shared hosting. Okay, so for only $2.80 per month, you are going to have, or you are going to be able to host 100 websites. They give you 100 gigabytes of SSD storage, as you can see here. Free weekly backups. They give you free domain name. How cool is that? For most of the hosting providers, you actually buy the domain name separately. Okay, here they give you a free domain name and a free email as well. So they give you a bunch of other stuff that are very cool and very helpful as well. Right, so this is a perfect deal for me. I'm going to go ahead and then click add to carts. And as I said, make sure you use the link in the description to get the best deal on Hostinger. All right, so this is very affordable. So I'm going to go ahead and then use the 48 months. Okay, and that's going to give me the best deal. And right here, I'm going to go ahead and then enter my email. Right, so that's my email. I'm going to use PayPal. As you can see, my total is $133. Okay, now I have a coupon for you. Okay, and this is the best coupon on Hostinger. Go ahead and enter the coupon code EGATOR. Okay, that's right here. Enter that and apply and see what you get. You get 10% discount. So that is a very cool deal, and this is a very reliable hosting. That is why I went ahead and then got you this very important deal. All right, so we are going to go ahead and submit our secure payment. All right, so after the payment, make sure you check out your email to finish up everything, confirm your email and all that. And right here, I'm going to go ahead and then log in. So right here, I just logged in and I'm going to go ahead. As I said, they give you a free domain name, so you can go ahead and then claim the domain, okay? Which is really, really cool. On most platforms or with most hosting providers, you actually have to buy the domain name separately, which will cost you probably $10 or more, right? So the domain name I'm going to buy is Dummy EGATOR, and I'm going to use the .com. Okay, so let me quickly check if that's actually available, and it is. Okay, so let's go ahead. As you can see here, that would cost me $14, but here they are giving it for me. They're giving it to me for free, which is really, really cool. Let's go ahead and then claim this domain name. Yeah, I forgot to mention, but they give us a free SSL as well. So let's go ahead and install that. Yep. And that's installing. And that's going to make sure every traffic on the website is secure. All right, so now let's proceed to work on the project. So I'll go ahead and create a folder for my projects, and I'll do that here on my desktop. I'll call this portfolio, and I'll drag that onto my Visual Studio Code icon. Okay, we are going to use VS Code to actually create this project, and this has opened on another screen, so let me just bring that up. So here we have our portfolio project opened in the VS Code. I'm going to go ahead and create the files we need. Of course, we need an HTML file, and that will be index.html. We need a CSS file as well, and this will be style.css. And also we need a JavaScript file. Now the JavaScript is just going to be a few lines of code. It's not going to be anywhere as much as the HTML and the CSS. All right, so let me just close that. We'll get back to the JavaScript around mid of the project. And here in the HTML, I'll just do exclamation and then tab to generate this boilerplate or the skeleton for our HTML. And I can go ahead and give our project a title. Now you can use your name. So in this case, I'm going to do Dyna IE, a hyphen, and I will say professional website developer, or you can say professional full stack developer, whatever you want to you want to have here. Okay, so that is our title. Now I'm going to go ahead and link my style sheet, that is the CSS file, and as you saw, I did link and then tab or enter, and I got this. Okay, so rel style sheet, and the href is going to point to our CSS file. Okay, so that will be the style.css. Right, I'm going to make sure this is well commented, so I'll do custom CSS. And of course, we are going to use some assets, some images. And so let's have assets folder here. And I'm going to go ahead and drag, the assets that we are going to use here. Okay, so let me just quickly I'm going to drag them onto, oh boy, it's taking forever. All right, so these are the images we are going to use. They are about 18. So these are the images we are going to use in this project. All right, so let me just minimize that and come back to the HTML. I'm using an extension called that's Lifesaver, and once you have that installed, of course you're going to get this right here to go live, and this is just going to open the project in your default browser. Okay, so whenever you make any changes and you save, your browser or your project is going to automatically update in your browser, right? There's another one, preview on web server as well, that you can install. So either you install this, that's preview on web server, and for that you actually have to right click and then launch on browser right here. Okay, but for the live server you have this that you can click to actually launch this project in your default browser. Okay, so here we have our project. You can see Dyna IE-professional website developer, right? Now what I want to have is I want to have a favor icon. Okay, so right here, instead of this icon, I want to have my picture. Okay, so in this case, Dyna IE is going to be right there, and I have an asset here, that is an image here called fav icon. So this is what I'm going to have in the or beside the title. All right, so here that's back in the HTML. So let's go ahead and have a link, and this time the rel is going to be icon. I'll have a type, and this type is going to be image/x icon, and the href is going to point to that image. Okay, so we have to go into our assets and then locate the favicon.png file. But once I save this and come back to the browser, we do have that. Okay, we have our favicon right here, as you can see. Now let's get back to the actual page, and we are going to start off with the floating navigation, and that is going to be inside of a nav tag. But then let me have a comment here. I'll say floating navigation, and let's put this inside of a nav tag, which is an HTML5 semantic tag. We'll have an ordered list, and I'll actually give this a class of nav__container, and I'll have my list item in there. I'll have a link or an anchor tag, and this should bring us to the top of the page. Okay, remember we are building a single page website, and so on click of this link with the pound, we should be brought to the top of the page. And in here I want to have an icon between the opening and closing anchor tag, but before that I want to have a class of active, because by default this will be, you know, when people visit the website, they will be at the top of the website, and so this anchor tag will be the active style, or it will have the active style. And between the opening and closing anchor tag I want to have an icon, and for icons we are going to use phosphor icons or phosphoricons right here. And so to use it, you just click get started and you copy these two links right here. Okay, there are two different links. If you want to use the fill, then you want to use this right here, but then if you want to use the regular, then you're going to use this right here. Okay, so we are going to use the regular, and so I'll just copy the regular link, and right here you can see we have regular, thin, light, bold, and all of that. Okay, and some are paid, but I think the regular is free for all the icons, and so that is what we are going to use. That is why I copied the link for the regular right here. Okay, so you just do that, and once you are done, of course you have to paste that in your head, your HTML head. So let me have a comment here as well. Phosphor icons or phosphoricons, and then I'll paste my link. Beautiful. So with that, I can use any icon I want, and I want a house, okay, or a home, right? Because that is the home page. So I just copy. Of course, you have to select web. You can use it for React, Vue, and all that. But of course, we are using web here. We are using HTML. So select web and then copy this right here. Okay. So once you copy that, you come into the HTML and then paste it wherever you want it. And once I save this, come back to our website, we should have, the icon. All right. So I'll just go ahead, and that is for our first LI. We are going to have multiple LIs. So another LI, I'll have my anchor tag, and this should take us to the about section of the web page. And here too, I want an icon inside of the opening and closing anchor tag. So I'll say user. I'll select this right here. I'll select this right here and then copy, come back and then paste. Once I save, of course, we should have that. I want another. I'm going to have another LI. I'll have my anchor tag, and this should take us to the portfolio or the projects section of the page. And here too, of course, we need an icon. I'll search for suitcase. Maybe this should be good. Yeah, I'll just use this, and then I'll paste that. Another LI. I'll have my anchor tag, and this should take us to the testimonials. And if you're not familiar with building, single page websites, these names that we have, we have the pound sign and then the name of the section. We have to give ID to that section so that these links actually work, or so that when we click on these links, we are actually taken to that particular section that matches the name. I hope that makes sense. So you're actually going to understand this once we get to the individual sections that match these links that we have, okay, these hrefs that we have. So with the testimonial, I'm going to search quotes. Yeah, perfect. So that should be good. So that is the icon I'm going to use. And lastly, I want contact. Okay, so LI, I have my link. That should take me to the contact section. And for the icon, I'll just search phone. Yeah, I'll just use this one right here. And that is it. So that is basically all we need to have here for the, the floating navigation that is in the HTML. And now we can proceed to actually give this some styling. Okay, this is what we have so far. And so let's go ahead and actually make this, look good. If you take a look at what we have so far on the page, you can see that, we have some default styling, and every HTML element actually has some default styles, right? As you can see for the list or the unordered list, you can see we have some bullets, we have underlines for, the links as well, and you can see some margins and patterns on the elements, right? And so usually you want to zero these things out. You want to make everything look clean, okay, so that you can style them by yourself. All right, so to achieve this, I'm going to target every element on the web page. So that's how you target every element on your web page. And so with that, I can do text decoration of none, and that should remove the underlines that we had for the links. I am also going to say the list style should be none as well. And now the bullets are gone. And the most important property you need here is the box sizing, okay? And you have to set that to border box. And this helps prevent overflows, basically. So whatever padding you give to any element, that's going to make sure that padding is included in the width or height of that element. Basically, that's how it behaves. So you always want to have this, okay? So with this, we can also go ahead and have a margin of 0. And once I do that, come back to the page, you can see the margin at the top is gone. We are going to do padding of 0 as well. So every element with any padding is now, zeroed out, right? We can also do outline of 0, border of 0, and that should be it. So once I say we have a clean slate, I will be using CSS variables, right? And so to have CSS variables, now these are going to be root variables, and that means every element can have access to these variables that I'm going to declare here. Okay, so that's called root variables. Okay, so let's go ahead and have our first variable, and every CSS variable starts with 2 hyphens, hyphen, hyphen, then you can continue with the name of the variable. I'm going to call this color primary, and there's going to be a hex value of 0A8DE4, which is blue. I'm going to have another color gray 0, and that's going to be white, that's FFF. And I have a lot more colors and border radius and all that I'm going to have. So instead of typing them all out, I'll just go ahead and bring them in. I'll just copy and paste, basically. So I'll just paste the variables I need for this project, and let me make sure this is formatted well. So these are the variables we are going to use in this entire project. And as you can see, I have 2 variables here that are commented out, and that is because I thought those colors are cool as well. So in case you want to change the primary color to be any of these 2 colors, then you can use it. And we are going to explore what those colors are later on once we have enough items on the web page using that primary color. So basically we have color primary gray, and the gray starts from 0, which is the lightest shade of gray, and it goes down to 900, which is the darkest shade of gray. We have border radius 1 to 5, and border radius 1 is the least border radius, and it goes up to 5, which is 2.2 rem. We have transition of all 300 milliseconds is. We have container width. So basically every major section on our page is going to have a container that wraps around the element in that section. And so that is why I have the container width for large devices. For medium devices, that's for tablets, and also for mobile phones, right? So that is basically the root variables we need for this entire project. Now I'll go ahead and target my body, and we need a font family. Okay, so you know what, I'll just come back to the HTML and have some dummy content on the web page. Okay, let me actually put this in an H1 so that the fonts are bigger. I'll do lorem 500 just so we have something to scroll on the web page. So far we do not have that scroll effect, and so now we do. Okay, and that is also going to help you understand how we position the floating navigation as well. So don't mind this content that we have. I just want to have it just so we can scroll on the page. All right, we could give the body a height, but I just want to have this content instead. And as I said, we need font family. Okay, I want to change the font that we have here. As you can see, this font, this serif font doesn't look really good for the portfolio website that we are trying to create. And so let's go to Google Fonts and grab a font there. And there are so many fonts that you can use. And let's see, I am going to remove all that I have and get a new font. So I'll just search Montserrat. Here is the font family I'm going to use here. Wait a minute. Yep, perfect. So once you select the font you want, you can get font and then get embedded code. Okay, and you have two ways of including fonts on your website or to your website. You can use the link, and with that you can just copy whatever you have and then paste that in the head of your HTML, just like we did for the the icon link, right? So you can paste that here, or the second option is to use the import. That's for the style sheet, and this is for the CSS. Okay, so between the opening and closing style tags, whatever is in there, you just copy and you paste that in your CSS file. And I usually paste that right at the top or right at the beginning of the CSS file. And so that is the first line. And now we can go ahead and use the font we just included in our project. So all you need to do is to add a font family of Montserrat and a backup as well. Of course, you can go ahead and have these other, properties, but I just need to have the font family. Okay, so I just copy and then paste. So font family Montserrat, which is the font we just added to our project, and this right here is just a backup just in case this doesn't work. I hope that makes sense. So with this, if we save, come back to our project, now you can see we have a Montserrat font. Now let's go ahead and give a background to our body, and I'm going to do color gray 100, which is a light gray, and that's how you use CSS variables. And in this case I'm using this color right here, and so if you come to the page, it is slightly darker than the white that we had before. And to prove this, I can change this to whatever color I want, and now you can see that's the color we are actually using. Okay, and I just did Ctrl+Z to undo that. So now let's come back to the body and give it a color. That's a text color of color gray 900, which is the darkest shade of gray we have. And I'll do line height of 1.6. I'll say the font size should be 0.9 rem. So that will be 0.9 times 16 pixels, which is the default font size for our HTML. And I will say user select should be none. Okay, so I don't want people to be able to select elements on the web page without a user select. Of course, we could select elements or text, but now with the user select set to none, that won't be possible. I'm clicking and dragging and nothing is being selected, which is what I want. All right, so that is it for the body style. Now, as I said, I need a general container class which is going to hold, or which is going to center elements horizontally for every major section of our web page. And so let's have that general container class so we can use it wherever we want to use it. And since this is a desktop first design approach that we are using, we want to use the width of container width LG. So right here you can see that's 80%. And of course, the main idea is to hold it right in the middle. That's horizontally, okay, on the x-axis. So we need to say margin inline should be auto. Okay, you may not understand this right now because we do not have that general container class anywhere on the page, or no element is using this class so far, so you won't really understand it, but just bear in mind we have this general container class. I want to have more general styles that is going to help us in the whole project. Okay, so some styles for our images, our links, our headings, our buttons, and all that. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually have these styles before we get to the floating nav itself. All right, so I'll target every link on the web page and say the color should be, let me show you real quick. You can see the color for this link is not really black. Okay, it's some kind of purple, dark purple or something like that. And so I want to change that. Okay, so I'll target every link or every anchor element and give them a variable color gray 900. The font weight, I want them to be 500, which is like semi-bold. And I will target every image that we will have on the web page, and I'll say every image should have 100% of its container element, and the height should be 100% of its container or its parent element as well. And they should all be displayed block, and they should have an object fit of cover. And that's for every image we will have on the web page. Now I'll say the H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6 should have a font weight of 900. The line height should be 1.1 in this case. Remember, initially every element, every text element is set to 1.6 for the line height, but for the headings, I'm being more specific with them and giving them a line height of 1.1. And I also say the color should be 900, color gray 900, and text transform should be uppercase. Come on. So every heading is going to be uppercased. Now I'm going to select the headings one after the other and give them a different font size. So I'll say 2.4 rem. I'll select the H2 and give that a font size of 2. Actually, I'll do 1.8 rem. I'll select the H3 and that will be 1.4 rem. I'll select the H4 and that will be 1 rem. I'll target the H5, that will be 0.85 rem, and lastly the H6, and that will have a font size of 0.75 rem. Remember, rem is a CSS unit, and 1 rem is equal to 16 pixels, and it's a responsive unit. That is why I'm using that instead of pixels. I have a full HTML and CSS course that explains everything that we are doing here. So if you're interested, of course, you can grab that using the link in the video description. Now I'm going to target the button. So every element that we give a class of BTN should have these styles that I'm going to write. Okay, so I'll give them a display of inline block. I'll give them a width of fit content, a padding of 1 rem for the top and bottom, and then 1.5 for the left and right. A border radius of the radius 3. Remember, we have border radius at the top set as variables, and that is what we are using here. So radius 3 is 0.9 rems, right? I'll give them a background of color gray 0, which is white, and I'll say color, or the text color for the button should have color gray 900, or should be color gray 900. And lastly, in case we have any hover effects, then we need a transition. So I'll say transition, and that will be the variable transition that I have up top, which is all 300 milliseconds easy, if you can remember that right here. Okay, so whatever property that we are transitioning, that is why I have the all. The duration is 300 milliseconds or 0.3 seconds, and the timing function is easy. All right, so that is all for the BTN class. Now I'll actually have another class of primary on any class of BTN. Okay, so if an element has a BTN and a primary class, then I'll go ahead and have these styles. I'll just change the background to be the primary background, and the color is going to be color gray 0. I'll select every section that we will have on this page and give them a pattern of 8 rem for the top and bottom, and then 0 for the left and right. And also I'll select the odd nth child of each section. You know what, it should be nth of type. Okay, so I think you should understand this later, but for now just bear with me. I just want to give them a background of color gray 0. So basically, if we have a section 1, then that section is going to, have the white color, and the next section that follows is going to have the body color. Okay, it's going to be transparent basically, since we haven't specified a color for it. I hope that makes sense, right? So every odd section in the sequence of our HTML is going to have a background of white. That's color gray 0. And I think that's it. I also have a class of section header, and with that I am going to text align to the center, and I'll set margin inline. So margin on the x-axis or horizontal margin is going to be auto, and the width is going to be 60%. And the last thing I want to have here, I'll select the section header and select the paragraph, and with that I'll just give it a margin of 0.4 rem for the top, 0 for the left and right, and then 3 rem for the bottom. And that's all the general styles I need for this entire project. So now we can actually proceed to the floating navigation. So let me actually go ahead and leave a comment. I'll say floating navigation. Remember, our floating nav is inside of a nav tag. So let's grab that nav tag, and that's the only tag, the only nav tag I'm going to have on the web page. That's why I'm not going to give it a class or an ID, right? So we are going to use that nav selector to grab it, and we are going to give it a background of white, which is a color gray 0, and I'll give it a padding all around, the padding of 0.6 rem, and a border radius of radius 4, which is I think 0.9 or so, I'm not sure. Okay, right here, 1.5. Okay, so now once I save this, come back to the page, and this is what we have. You can see we have our background. Now I want this to actually have a shadow, so let's give it a box shadow, and it's going to be 0 for the x-axis, 2 rem for the y-axis. So the shadow should be down, and I want a blur of 2 rem as well, and a spread of -1 rem. So instead of it spreading, it's actually going to shrink, right? 1 rem. The color is going to be an RGBA of black with some alpha, so 0, 0, 0, and an alpha of 20%, so that will be 0.2. Once I save this, come back to the page, you can see we have a slightly dark shadow for our nav or our floating navigation. Now if I increase this to around 0.9, that should be very obvious that we have, a shadow, but that's too much, so I'll do 0.2. Right, now I want to have 2 shadows, one at the top and one at the bottom, right? And that is going to help with the dark theme as well. Black shadow on a black or dark theme is not going to be very obvious. So I want to have a second shadow which is going to be white with some alpha, so that will be 0 on the x-axis as well, and I'm going to do -1 rem for the y-axis. So this shadow is going to be at the top, and for the the blur I'm going to do 1, and for the the spread I'm going to do -1 as well. And this time the color is going to be an RGBA of white, so 255 for red, green, blue, and I'll do 0.15 for the alpha. And once I save, of course it's not going to show because this is a white background, but it is there, right? So that's our box shadow. Now I'll go ahead and actually make this fixed, or I'll position that to be fixed, and that means wherever we scroll or however long we scroll down, it is still going to be at the same position. But that's not the position I want it, so I'm going to give it a bottom of 2 rem. So it should be 2 rem from the bottom of the viewport, and from the left it should be 50% on the on the x-axis. Right now, if I save, there's not exactly on the 50% point that I want it. Okay, and so what I want to do is to actually bring it 50% depending on the width of the item that I'm positioning, right? And so you achieve this with transform and translate. And in this case, I want to translate on the X axis, and that's why I have translate X. And so I'll just do negative 50%. Okay, so now this exactly in the middle horizontally, right? So I also do a z-index of 10 to make sure this sits on top of everything that we have on the web page. And that is all for our nav item. Now let's target the nav container, which is the direct child of the nav, and also the UL. Okay, so the UL with a class of nav container, let's target that and display that to be flex or align items to the center and justify content to be spaced between. And lastly, I'll give it a gap of 0.8 rem. Once I save, come back to the web page. That's what we have. Okay, we have some space between the list items. Now I'm not going to target the list item, but instead I'm going to target the link inside of the list item. Okay, so I'll target the links inside of the nav, and that should grab all the links that we have here. And the reason why I'm not targeting the list items is because the links are what we are going to click to actually navigate the web page, right? Not the list items. And so let's give the links a width of 2.8 rem, and I want the height to be the same as the width. So I'll do aspect ratio of 1:1, and I'll give them a background of color gray 100, display grid, place items to the center to make sure the icons we have are exactly in the middle horizontally and vertically. I'll do border radius of radius 3, which is 0.9 rem, and I'll give it a transition of variable transition. Okay, now let's go ahead and actually have a hover effect, and also let's give it have an active class for any of the link that is active. Now so far this is what we have, right? So let's target the links inside of the nav, and on hover, and if they have a class of active, then we are going to give them a background of the primary color. Oh, come on, color primary. And the text color is going to be color white. That's color gray 0. And that's what we have. Okay, so when we hover, we have that effect. And the active one by default should have that style as well. I think that is all for our floating nav. And so let's go ahead and move on to the next section of our page, and that will be the main header section. Okay, so let me just remove the H1 that I had. I just wanted to have that just so we can see, just so we can scroll on the page. But so far, this is what we have. All right, so I'll come back to my HTML, and I'll have a comment here. I'll say main header. Let me have some space below it as well. I'll have this inside of a header tag, and I'll also give this a class of main header like that. And then I'll have my container class, which will wrap around everything we have in here in the header, right? Which will help with the horizontal centering. All right, and remember we already have the styles for our container right here. And so, yeah. So I just come back here and have a div with a class of container, and I also give this another class of main header __ container, which is more specific to this header. Now in here in the container, I'm going to have an image, okay, but I want the image to be styled, controllably, and so I'm going to wrap a div around it, and I'll give this a class of main header image, and then I'll have my image inside of it. So let's get into our assets and get the user 2. Now below the image, that's below the div that holds the image, I'm going to have an h5, and I'll say hi, comma, I am Dinah IE. Below that, I'll have an h2, and I'll say full stack web developer. So that can be whatever you do. And in a paragraph, I'll say if you are looking to create a modern, fast, and responsive website or web app for yourself or your business, then you've found the right girl for the job. And you can continue to add more. Of course, you could be more, creative here, but that's enough. And below this, I'm going to have my call to action buttons. Okay, so I'll have a div here with a class of main header __ CTA. Okay, so main header call to action, and in here I'll have two links. The first one should take us to the portfolio, which has the recent projects, and I'm actually going to give this a class of BTN. And remember, we do have that BTN class already here. Okay, so display inline block width of face content pattern, blah blah blah. And so we just have to add this class, and the styles that we have here should take effect, right? So that's what we are doing here. And I'm also going to have an icon, and so I'll go to first four icons. I closed it, so I have to come back and search for briefcase. I'll just copy this for the web, come back here and then paste that in the opening and closing of the link. Now next to the icon, I'll say my project, or you could say recent projects. So on click of this link, we should be taken to the section with the ID of portfolio. I'll have another link, and this will take us to the contact section. And so you know what, I'll give this a class as well of BTN and the primary class. And remember, the primary gives it the primary background and a white text or a white color. And here too, I'm going to grab an icon. So let's search handshake right here. That's what I want. And I'll bring that in between the opening and closing tag of the link. And I'll say hire me, or you could say contact me, whatever you want. All right, so I think that is enough. And as you can see, we have the styles for our buttons already. Okay, and that is looking perfect. Now what I want to do is to actually have a few more elements here. I want to have some socials, links that can lead your visitors to your social media handles. And so I'm going to have an ordered list with a class of header socials. So header __ socials, plural. And in there, I'm going to have, the links. Of course, you could put this inside list items, but I'm just going to go directly to having the links in here. Okay, or you could change this to be a menu item. That should work too. Since we are not using the list item, I should probably do the menu. I want this to take me to the YouTube. Okay, but then once they click on the link, I want the link to open in a new tab, right? I want the page, that's the YouTube website, to open in a new tab. And so I'll give this a target of _blank. Okay, and I need the YouTube logo here, so I'll just come back to phosphor icons or phosphoricons and search for YouTube. I'll grab the icon here, come back and then paste it between the opening and closing of my link. And since I have the target of blank, of course I need to add a rel of no opener, no referrer. Okay, for security reasons. I think I should duplicate this one more time for the next social media handle. And so I'll grab LinkedIn right here, copy that, and I'll just have to change the icon. Of course, for the href, you should have your social media handle here. In my case, for the YouTube, that would be https youtube.com/EGATOR tutorials. That's my handle right here. Okay, for the LinkedIn, I'll enter that later on. So that is for the LinkedIn. I'll just proceed and I'll grab the GitHub. So I'll grab this right here, come back to the page and change the icon for GitHub. Of course, here too you should have your GitHub link. And finally, I have one more, and this should take us to Twitter. Okay, so just search X or Twitter. I think that's the logo, right? I'm not sure. I say Twitter. Yep, that's the Twitter logo. So that's it. Okay, so we have our socials here as well. Of course, as I said, you should remember to have the href for all the socials. And I will do that off screen because I'm not precisely sure of some of my handles. Now, the last element I want to have before we get to the styling is a button that is going to help us toggle the dark and light theme. And so let's have a button here. And I'm going to give this a class of theme __ btn. And I'll have my icon here. So I'll search for moon. I'll grab that, put that in here. No, let me just format this for. All right, perfect. So that is it for the HTML for the entire main header. Okay, so we have our image, we have the headings, we have of course the subheading and the main heading, we have the paragraph, we have the call to action, we have the socials, and then the button for the theme toggle. So now I think we are going to get back in here in the CSS to give this some styling. And so I'll just say main header. Of course, let's see what we have. And so far this is what we have. Okay, so we have all the icons and everything is in place. So let's go ahead and actually style this. Let's target the main header and give that a height of 100 viewport height. Okay, so it takes exactly the full height of the viewport. Whatever the device is going to take the full height. But in some cases, some phones have a very short, viewport height. And so they may not be able to contain every element, in the header section, right? So I'll do a main height of fit content, right? So that should be perfect. I'm going to display grid here, and that is because I want to place items to the center, and that should put the direct child of the header right in the middle of that header. So in this case, the container is going to be put right in the middle of its parent, which is the main header in this case. Now let's grab the main header container, and I'm going to text align that to the center. First of all, let's see what we have so far. Okay, so this is what we have, right? So text align to the center. I'll give a height of 100% and a position of relative. And the reason why I'm positioning it relative here is because I'm going to position some elements absolute. Okay, so the the socials is going to be positioned absolute. So now let's grab the paragraph that we have here and give it some styling. I think it's spanning too much, it's too wide, and so let's control that. I'll target the main header and then the paragraph inside of it, and give that a maximum width. So max width of 80 ch, and then margin inline of auto. I save, and this is what we have. Now I'm going to target the image. So main header image, that's the div that wraps around the image. I'll give that a width of 15 rem, a height of 17 rem, a border radius of 7.5 rem, 7.5 rem, 3 rem, 3 rem. I'll save, and this is what we have. Of course, the border radius is not showing because we have to go ahead and do overflow of heading, and now we have it. I'll give a margin of 6 rem for the top, auto for the left and right, and then 1.5 for the bottom, and that's the perfect position I want it. And I'll do opacity of 0, and for this I'm actually going to comment that out because I'm going to use this for animation. Okay, so far this is what we have. Now what I want to do is to actually target the H2, that's in this case our main title. Okay, so let's target the H2. So main header H2, and I'll give that a margin of 0.5 for the top and then 0 for the left. So 0.5 for the top and bottom, and then 0 for the left and right. Now let's target the call to action, which has the two links, the two call to action links. That's main header CTA. I'll give that a margin top of 2 rem, a display of flex, justify content of center. I'll have a gap of 1.2 rem. I'll have, let me save and see. So far that is perfect. I'll also go ahead and grab the link inside of the call to actions. Okay, so main header CTA, and I'll grab the links and I'll display that to be flex. I'll align items to the center and have a gap of 0.5 rem. And once I save, come back to the page, this is what we have. Okay, so now there is some space between the icon and the text. Now I want to increase the icon inside of the link a little bit, so let's grab that. So that's main header CTA. Come on, CTA. I'll have the icon inside of the link, and I'll say the font size should be 1.3 rem. So now that's what we have. We can proceed to grab the socials right here and position it around here. So header socials, I'll position that absolute, and it's going to be absolute in relation or in respect to the container. That is why I have position relative on the container, okay, which is an ancestor of this header socials. So it's going to respect, I'll give it a right of 0, a bottom of 6 rem, and a display flex. Now the display is actually, the flex direction is going to be column, and I'll have a gap of 1 rem. I'll save, come back, and that is what we have. Now let's grab the individual links and give them some styling. So I'll do background of white, and I'll do a text color of 900, which is the darkest shade of the gray. I'll do display grid and place items of center. I'll do a pattern of 0.5 rem, border radius of, you know what border radius should I even use here? Okay, radius 2 should be good. So variable radius 2. And lastly, I want to, you know what, let me just save this, and this looks perfect. But then I'm going to have a hover effect. So let me add a transition of the variable transition. So with this, I can go ahead and have the hover effect right away. So header socials A on hover, I want the background to be color gray 900 and the text color to be color gray 0, which is the white. Okay, so now we should have this. Perfect. Now I want to target this right here, which is the theme button. So theme btn, that's the class we gave it. I'll position that to be fixed. I'll give it a top of 2 rem and the right of 10%. Okay, so fixed positions actually doesn't respect, if you have a relative position on its ancestor. Okay, they are always going to be fixed in respect to the viewport. And so since our our container is or has a width of 80%, the container is 80% in width, right? So right here, that's where it ends on the right side. So on the left side is going to end around here. So there's basically 10% space on the left and 10 more on the right side, right? So all I'm doing here is, giving a space of 10% on the right side, just so it aligns with the container. I hope I'm making some sense, guys. So that is why I'm giving a 10%, right here. Or I'll give it a background of color gray 0, which is a white. I'll do a color or a text color of color gray 900. I'll have a width of 2.7 rem. Same for the height. I'll do font size of 1.3 rem and the border radius of radius 3. Display of grid. Place items of center. Z index of 2. I'll set the cursor to be pointer. Okay, so let me do that real quick. Cursor of pointer. And I want to have a hover effect here, so I'll do transition. All right, so there we have it. So now let me have the hover effect. So on hover, I'll do background, just like we did for the, the socials. Okay, and then color 0. All right, so I'll save this, come back, and perfect. All right, so I think that is the styling we need for the main header. But then I want some animations. Okay, now if we reload, we instantly get everything. Okay, but then I want a custom animation, a fading effect for the image here, and maybe a fade up for the, I don't know if that's the right word, but a fade up. I want the 2 call to actions to come from the down here. Okay, so let's try creating this by ourselves using keyframes. So back into my CSS, I'm going to scroll up to where I have the styles for the header image right here. And I'm going to bring back the opacity of 0. Okay, so now we do not see it, right? And so let's go ahead and have a keyframe that is going to bring it back. So keyframes and the identifier here, just basically the name of the animation or the keyframe. I'll do animate main image. Okay, and I want this to go to an opacity of 1. That's all I need here. Okay, so of course we need to attach this keyframe to our element that we are trying to animate. And so I'll say animation, and I will have the name of the animation, or sorry, the name of the keyframe, and the duration of this animation. I want it to be 2 seconds, but I want a delay of 1 second, right? and the timing function is going to be ease out. We have ease, linear, and all that. I want ease out, and lastly I want forwards. And this forwards is basically, let me just remove it so that you see what what it does. And so yeah, we have the animation, but then you can see it vanishes. So with the forwards, it makes sure the animation ends at the end state of the keyframe, okay, instead of returning to the previous style that we had it. I hope that makes sense. All right, so once we come to the page and reload, we have a fade in and the image actually stays. Okay, now let's proceed and do same for all very similar then to the call to action buttons that we have here. And so I have to scroll here to the call to action, and I'll have a keyframe, and I'll name this fade up, and this should be going to an opacity of 1 and a transform, and I'll translate on the y-axis of 0. Okay, so translating on the y-axis to 0 basically means it should be in this current position that is in right now. Okay, so that is going to be the end state, but then in the in the initial state, I want the opacity or opacity to be 0. So basically it shouldn't be visible, and the y translate is going to be, let's do 6 rem. I'll do 6 rem right here. And once I save and come back, of course nothing is going to happen because we haven't attached this keyframe to the element. So I'll say animation, and I'll have my keyframe. I'll want this to be 2 seconds, 1 second delay. Actually I'll do 1.5. okay, so once the image starts coming in, then I want this to also start coming in. Okay, so you have a little bit delay there of 0.5 seconds, and I'll do ease out here as well. For the timing function, I'll do forwards. All right, so now once I save, I have to reload. The image comes in, and we have this cool animation for the call to action as well. All right, so I think that is it for our main header. Of course, the theme toggle functionality is not working right now. We are going to achieve that using JavaScript, but then you can see we can actually click the socials to actually visit the respective links. And of course, as I said, make sure you have your socials in the href. You may not believe what I'm about to say, guys. So I had recorded all the videos from this point. Okay, I recorded the theme functionality, the about section, the approach or the process section, the project section or the portfolio section, the testimonial section, and all that, just to realize that all those sections were corrupted. That means the videos from the recordings weren't good enough. Okay, they had some issues. I think my recorder was a problem, so I just have to start over again. Of course, you are not going to notice that I'm recording this, but that is what is about to happen right now. And I just want to make the video perfect for you guys, just so you find the value that you expect in this tutorial. And with that said, of course, if you have the means to support my work, just go ahead, like, subscribe. If you have the money to buy the source code, of course, you do not need to buy the source code if you don't have the means. That is why I walk you through everything step by step to make sure you really understand what I'm doing, and also give you the assets for free so that you can follow along and build everything for yourself, right? But if you have the means to buy the source code, or if you have the means to support me in any way, just reach out, support me, and I'll really appreciate it. So just get the source code. That will be a generous way of supporting the work that I provide for free here, because YouTube does not pay enough for all these all this stress. So if you have the means, just be generous, get the source code, join my Patreon, whatever you want to do or whatever you have to do to support me, I would really appreciate it. All right, so we have to start, or I have to start all over from here up to the end of the video once again. And I think we have to go ahead and, make the theme functionality work. Okay, I don't want to finish before I come back to make the theme work. Once I'm here on the main header, let's make sure the theme works, and we'll be completely done with the main header section. All right, so with that, of course, we are going to use JavaScript, and so I'm going to have my script, and I'll link my main.js file, and that's at the bottom of the web page. Okay, so right before the closing body tag, that's where I have my script. And so let's go into our main.js. I'll just do alert just to make sure this is working, and it is. Okay, we have an alert, so that means our JavaScript file is actually connected or linked to our website. The concept of dark and light theme is very easy to apply to any website when you are using CSS variables. Okay, so in this case, right below the, really anywhere on the page, okay, but it should be above, wherever you apply or wherever you start applying your CSS variable. So ideally, I'm going to paste my dark theme right below the root variables. So I just have a class here called dark, and in there I'll just have my theme colors for the dark theme. And if you take a close look, you can see that we are just swapping the dark variables with the light variables and vice versa. Okay, so color grade 900 here for the dark theme is actually the lightest color, which is white. But in the root, which is the light theme or the default theme, color grade 0 is actually the lightest. Okay, whereas color grade 900 is the darkest. Okay, so it's just the opposite of what we have in the dark in the light theme. All right, so with this, that's with the variables that we have in the class of dark. We can come here and just apply or have a class on the body, okay, called dark. And once we do that, come back to the page. Now we have dark theme. Okay, so it's that simple. If you want to apply or have dark theme for your website or for any website using CSS variables, make this very, very easy. All right, so that is how we are going to be able to apply light and dark theme to this website. Okay, so make sure you have the colors you need. Of course, you can make any adjustments or whatever adjustments you want to have. You can have those adjustments, right? So that is it. Now we have to actually make this work using the button. Okay, so on click of this, we should be able to toggle the dark and light theme. All right, so let's come back to our JavaScript. Let me just have a comment here. I'll say change and save theme to local storage. Okay, and that's exactly what we are going to do here. Now we have to grab the button that is going to do the toggle. So I'll call this theme btn, and we gave that a class. Let me check that real quick from the HTML right here. We gave that a class of theme underscore btn. Okay, so I'll say document.query selector, and then I'll say theme underscore btn. All right, now once you have that, we can go ahead and say theme btn, and I'm going to add an event listener. So add event listener. This is going to be a click event. So on click, I want to run this anonymous function here, right? So on click, this function is going to run, and in this function I want to say if the document body, that's if the body tag right here, so if this body tag has a class name equal to empty, then that means we are on light theme. Okay, so previously we had a class that was empty, and it's basically the same as not having any class at all. Okay, so if we have an empty class, then we know we are on light theme, and so we want to actually change to dark theme, right? So I'll say document dot body dot class name should then be equal to dark, and with the dark, that means the dark class variables are now going to apply. I hope that makes sense. And so with this, we can say now we want to save to local storage, right? We want to actually make sure this is saved to local storage. But you know what? let me just go ahead and try this out. So I'll come here, and once I hit it, now we're on dark theme. Okay, but once I click, you can see that nothing happens again. Okay, we are not changing to light theme, and so we have to come back and have an else. So else is going to be the opposite of what we have here. So I'll just duplicate this and then bring it down. So if you're on dark theme, then that means we are going to switch to light theme, which is the empty class. Okay, so now we should have that toggle. So I can click to change to dark theme and click again to change to light theme. Okay, so now we do have the toggle. Now notice once I refresh, we come back to the light theme, which is what we don't want. Okay, so when your visitors come to the website and change the theme to dark theme, they should continuously have the dark theme unless they specifically go ahead and change it back to the light theme. I hope that makes sense. And so what we are going to do is to actually save the changes to local storage. I'm just going to delete what I had before. As I said, I had finished all this part of the video. That is why I had the the theme actually saved in the local storage. But now we do not have it saved in the local storage, so we should make sure once we apply the theme that we want, we save that theme in the local storage. And so let's go ahead and actually do this. So once I change to dark theme, I want to say local storage dot set item, and I'm going to call this portfolio underscore theme, and I'll save dark, okay, which is the class I want to save here. All right, so once you do that, you just have to do same here, but here of course you're going to save an empty string. Okay, so now I'm just going to show you that it is going to be saved here in the local storage. So I'll just click, and notice nothing is here, right? So I'll just click, and now since I changed to dark theme, I have that saved here. If I click again, then an empty string is saved here. That's why you don't see anything here. Okay, so that is the toggle being saved in the local storage. So whenever your visitors come, it is going to be saved. But now if I refresh, it's still going to go back to the light because we are not applying what is saved here, right? So let's go ahead and actually apply this. And so I'll come back here, and that's way down here. I'll say get theme from local storage and apply on page load or on page reload, whatever. So I'll say window dot add event listener. There's going to be a load event, and on load I want this function to run. So let me have a constant here. I'll say saved theme should be equal to local storage dot get item. So I'm going to get the saved theme, and remember this is the name we gave it, so I just grab on that. And if nothing is gotten back, or if it is undefined, then I'm going to know that the user, this is the first time the user has been on the website. Okay, so in that case we will use the empty string, right, just so we don't get any errors. All right, so I'll say document.body.class name should be equal to the theme that we got from the local storage. Okay, so with this I'll come back, and now you can see we are on the dark theme, which is what we have saved in the local storage. All right, so I can go ahead and of course reload multiple times, and the theme that we saved is what is going to persist. Okay, if I change to light theme, I'll reload multiple times, and the light theme is what is going to persist. If I change it back to dark, then the dark is what is going to persist. I hope that makes sense. Perfect. All right, so what we need to do now, of course, if you pay attention, you can see that the icon in the button is actually not changing. So if you're on light theme, then I want the moon icon to show, and if you're on dark theme, then I want the sun icon to show. Okay, so let's try and apply that, and I'm going to start here and say if document.body.class name is equal to empty, Then I'll say theme btn dot inner html should be equal to, and I'm going to come back to the HTML here, and I'm going to grab the icon that we have inside of the button. I'll just copy that. I'll come back here and have a template literal, okay, and I'm going to paste this in there, right? So if we are on light theme, then I want this to be the icon, but then if you're on dark theme, I'll just duplicate this with Shift Alt and then the down arrow, and then push it down here, and now I'll change this to sun. Okay, so once I come back, now you can see I have the sun icon. If I switch back to, you know, the light theme, although it has been saved, now I have to reload to actually get it back. Okay, so to prevent this, I have to come back here, that's in the, you know, the actual toggle, and actually do the same thing that I just did here. Okay, so in this case it's going to be, you know, the sun here. I just paste this. So in this case this is going to be the sun, and I'll copy this as well and then paste it, and in this case this is going to be the moon, right? So just follow along and do exactly what I've done here, and you should have a perfect dark and light theme functionality. So I'll reload. As you can see, now I have the right icon. So if I'm on dark theme, this should imply that by clicking this icon, I want to switch to a light theme. That is why I have the sun icon here. Okay, I can reload, and this should be still the sun icon. And once I click to get to the light theme, we have the moon icon. So everything is working right. Everything is working exactly as expected for the theme functionality. So now we can proceed to the other parts or the other sections of the web page, and we need to move on to the next section, which is the about section. I'm going to have this inside of a section tag, which is an HTML5 semantic tag, and I'm actually going to give this an ID of about. Okay, remember we need this in order to actually be able to scroll to that section, okay, from here, from the floating navigation. We gave this a hashtag of about, that's the href. So on click of this link, we should be scrolled down to this section right here. Okay, so make sure you have an ID of about, which should match what you gave it, what you have in the href in the floating navigation. I hope that makes sense. All right, so in here I'm going to have my container. It's going to wrap around everything I'm going to have here in this section, and I'll have a container more specific to this section that will be called about container. Okay, so about __ container. Now in here I'm going to have a left and a right side, and the left side I'll just say about __ left, and I'll duplicate this to actually have the right. So the left side will just have an image, the right side will have some text. And so let's just go ahead and have the image. I'll go into my assets and grab the about, and here in the right I'm going to have a div, and I'm not even going to give this any selector. I'll have an h3. I'll say who am I question mark, and below that I'm going to have a paragraph. I'll do lorem, and yeah, that should be enough. And below this div I'm going to have another div, and this too I'm not going to give it any class. I'll say h3 why hire me, and below that I'm going to have a paragraph. I'll do lorem 40, and below that paragraph I'm going to have another paragraph. I'll just do lorem, and lastly, yeah, maybe that should be it. That's enough. Maybe it is even too much. Let me just end it there. Perfect. And lastly I'm going to have a link that should open my CV. Okay, so let's have an anchor tag, and let's locate that CV or that resume. And so let's go into our assets, and I have cv.jpg. And pardon me for the background noise. I don't live in the most, silent neighborhood. So just pardon me for the dogs barking and all that. All right, I'm going to have, of course, set the target to be blank so that it opens in a new tab. I'm going to give this a class of btn and primary, which are classes we already have from the general styles. Okay, so remember we had a btn class with display in block with of fit content and all that. So we are using that right here. And also any btn with a class of primary as well is going to have these classes. So those are the classes I'm using here. And lastly, of course, since I'm opening in a new tab, I should have my rel set to no opener, and no refer. Perfect. I want to have an icon here. So let's go to first 4 icons and get an icon. So first 4 icons. And I'm just going to search file to get something related to file. Just anything, you can use this PDF file or any file at all. Okay. Maybe I should just use this. I'm not sure. So I'll select web and then copy this. I'll come back to the code and then paste it. Okay. And that is all we need for our HTML for this about section. Let me actually have a comment here. About section. And that's it. Okay, so now we should hop into the CSS and make sure this actually looks good. First of all, let's see what we have. Okay, so we have the image for the left side, and then we have, you know what, I won't only have the icon, but I'll go ahead and say, I'll say check out my CV. Right, so now, yeah, that's how I want it. All right, so that is all for the HTML for the about. And so let's go to the CSS and make sure this actually looks good. I'll have some space and then say about section. Come on, what is going on? I'll select the about container and I'm going to display that to be grid. Of course, we have to set the grid template columns. So I'll say grid template, come on. Grid template columns is going to be 26 rem for the left side and then auto for the right side. So once I save, this is what we have. We need a gap, of course. So I'll say a gap of 8 rem should be enough, and I'll align items to the center. All right, so that is what we have. Now I want to target this left side, which has the image. So I'll say about __ left. Aspect ratio, I'll set that to 1:1. Border radius of 5 rem, and I'll set overflow to hidden. Perfect. Now let's work on this side, which is the right side. So I'll say about right. I'll display flex. The flex direction is going to be column, and I'll have a gap of 1.2 rem. Cool. I'll go ahead and for the about right, I'll target the H3 margin bottom. I'll give it 0.4 rem. I'll target the link right here. I'll target that, so about right, and the link, I'll give that a margin top 2 rem. Display of flex, I'll align items to the center and have a gap of 0.5 rem. Okay, so that's what we have. Now I'll just target the icon and then increase the font size a little bit. So about right, and the icon, I'll say font size should be 1.2 rem, or maybe 1.3 rem. Yeah, that's perfect. All right, so I think that is all for the about section, and so let's quickly move on to the next section. And of course, once we click, we should be taken to the, the about section. And I think I did this in the first, stage. As I said earlier, I recorded this, and then because of some issues, I had to record this again, right? So in the first stage, I added, I targeted the HTML element, okay? And I added a scroll behavior of smooth. That is why once we click, we scroll smoothly to the different sections on the web page. Okay, if I should comment this out and try going to the about section, I'm just taking there without any smooth behavior. Okay, so make sure you target the HTML element and then have this scroll behavior or smooth on there. All right, so now let's work on the next section, which is the approach or process section. I'll put this in a section with a class of process. And notice I'm not using an ID here because we don't need to be scrolled down to this section. Okay, we do not have any, link that brings us to that section. That is why I don't have any ID for this section, right? And a direct child of this section is going to be the container class and a process underscore container class. Okay, I'm going to have an article with a class of left and a class of right as well, which will be siblings. You know what? Yeah, I'll just leave it like, I'll just call it process underscore left and process underscore right. Okay, I'll have an h2 and I'll say my approach. Below the h2, I'm going to have a paragraph. I'll say this is how I generally take on most projects. Yep. And I'll just have some lorem text here. I'll do lorem 11 maybe. I'll just go ahead and remove this. Below this paragraph, I'm going to have an ordered list, and I'm not even going to give this any class. I'll just have a list item here, and I have an h1, and this is going to have 1, meaning this is the first approach to my process. And so below the h1, I'm going to have a div with an h5, and I'll say research. And below the h5, I'm going to have a paragraph, and I'll just do lorem 20 to have some dummy text. And so that is it for our first list item. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that twice to have 2 more processes. So this will be the second one and the third one. The last one is development. So I'll just say development. Of course, you can have a long list of your process. You can have, you can start with research. You go to design, you go to development, and then you go to testing, you go to whatever you want to go to. Okay, but I think this is enough. We're not trying to be perfect here. And so that is for the left side, and for the right side we are only going to have an image. So I'll go ahead and have an image in here. I'll get into my assets and grab process.png, and once I save this, come back to the page, this is what we have. All right, so now let's go ahead and actually style this and make it look good with CSS. So I'll come here into my style sheet. I'll say my approach. Perfect. I'm going to grab this heading right here, which is an h2. So process container, or I can just do process and then get the h2. Simple as that. I will do margin bottom and I'll do 0.4 rem. That should be enough. And now I'm going to get the process container itself, and I'm going to get the process container. I'll display that to be grid, and the grid template columns is going to be 1FR 1FR, and lastly I'll have a gap of 4 rem. Okay, now I'm going to target the unordered list. So process unordered list, I'll display that to be flex, and the flex direction is going to be column. I'll have a gap of 2.5 rem and a margin top of 3 rem. Okay, so we have the LIs in a flex column, as you can see here. Perfect. Now I'm going to grab the H1s, which has the numbers. Process UL H1 with 7 rem, aspect ratio 1:1, display of grid, place items of center, and I'll give it a background of the primary color, and I'll say color should be, that's the text color, should be white with gray 0, and I'll set a border radius of radius 4. So I'll save this, and this is what we have. Okay, now I need to actually display this, LI. That's the LI which has the H1, the H5, and the paragraph. I want to display that to be flex. Okay, now remember the H5 and the paragraph are inside a div. Okay, so I can display flex, and that will pull the H1 here and the div in a row. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And I think I should do that right here. So process UL LI, I'll display that to be flex. I'll have a gap of 1.5 rem. And what else? I'll just align items to the center. I'll target the right side. So process right. That was the class we gave it, right? I have to, yep. So I'll target that, and I'll give a border radius of 4 rem. And remember, it has an image, so the border radius alone is not going to show unless I set a hidden overflow. Okay, and as you can see, the text in the image is too close to the edges. So I'm going to have a padding in here of about 2 rem. You know what, let's just proceed, and I'll correct any issues later. So I'll set a background of white. So color, you know what, I'll just do white, and this is what I have. The image is not exactly how I expect it to be. I'm not sure what the issue is, but this is not the look I'm expecting to get from this styling. Okay, these shouldn't be cut off. I'm going to set the align items to be start. Okay, let me try that. Okay, so we have it, right? We have that fixed, but now I want to reduce the border radius for the H1s here. You know what, I'll just make it 7 rem, but then the border radius, I'll reduce that to 3, and that is still not exactly what I want. Or maybe maybe flex that for the align items here, and I'll change this to that. You know, I'll just keep this for now. Okay, I'll just keep this for now. I don't want to waste too much time trying to fix this issue. Or maybe the last thing I would like to do here is to actually grab the H5. So process H5 and maybe give it a margin bottom of 0.3 rem, just to push it down a little bit, and this should be enough. Okay, of course, if you want to put this in the middle, you can go ahead and do that, but I just didn't like how I'll just try. And I know there's not very ordered like this particular section. I just wasn't expecting this problem, that's all. So right here in the wait, why was center not working though? That's okay. So now it's did I spell center wrong? What was the issue? Maybe I did. Okay, that was my bad. So everything is working exactly as expected. As you can see, the alignment is perfect. And now we can move on to the next section of this website, and that will be the the recent project section, or the portfolio section. So I'll say portfolio or recent project. I'll have a section here with an ID of portfolio. Okay, now you can make it projects or whatever you want. Okay, whatever makes sense to you, you can do so, but remember this should match what you have here. Okay, so the number sign and then what the ID is. Okay, this should match the ID of the section that you want to scroll to. All right, so I'm going to have my container and portfolio underscore container class. I'll have my header with section underscore header, and I'll have an h3. I'll say my recent project. Below that, I'm going to have a paragraph, and I'll say here are some of my recent projects. And I want this to be a little longer, so I'll have you know what, I'll just leave it like this, guys. I don't want to be too extra. Okay, now below this header, I'm going to have my menu, which is going to have all the all the projects. And so I'm going to give this a class of portfolio underscore list, and I'll have my first project, and this will be inside an article tag with a class of portfolio underscore item. And so I'll have a div with a class of portfolio item image, and so this should just have the image or a thumbnail of the project. So I'll go into my assets and grab portfolio 1, and below the div that has the image, I'm going to have portfolio content, which will have the title of the portfolio or the project, and some short description. So I'll have portfolio item content, and first I'll have an h4, and this one, the title is going to be crypto trading dashboard, and my typing is so slow today, I don't know why. And then below that, I'm going to have a paragraph that will have some description. So I'll just remove this right here and maybe shorten it a little bit. That should be good. All right, so that is for the content, and I think what, I'm going to have one more then here, and that is the call to action. So we need 2 links. One should go to a demo of the project and another to a GitHub of the project. Okay, so I'll have a div here that should have a class of portfolio item CTA. So I'll have a link for this href. I'll just let it go to my website, but this should be an href or a link to the actual project. Okay, and I want this to open in a new tab, so target of blank, and of course I'm going to have rel, no opener, no referrer. And lastly, I'm going to give this a class of btn And yeah, I guess that's it. Okay, now in here I'm going to have a link icon. Okay, so, or a chain icon. So I'll just grab this link, come back and paste it. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this link, and this should be GitHub. Yep, so this should be going to GitHub, but I'm going to leave the link to be my website. Okay, but in your case it should be a link to the repository of the project. All right, so I save, I come back to the project, and we should have our first project here. And I think I should give this a class of, wait a minute. Okay, so this should have a class of btn and primary. Okay, yeah, perfect. So now we have our first project, which is inside of this article. And so I'm going to, you know what, instead of duplicating, I'm just going to go ahead and bring in what I have, which is just a duplicate of this article. Okay, I'll just have to change the image, and I have all the images here in the assets. So I have portfolio 1, 2, 3, and it goes on like that, right? So I just have to change the image, the title, the description, the link. In your case, you should use real links to the demo and the GitHub, right? So just do that and you should be good to go. And that is what I'm going to paste here. Perfect. And I have about 6, so that's it. Okay, so now we can hop into our CSS and actually style this up. Of course, let's get back here and see what we have. And there's it. Okay, right, so let's get back here in the CSS. I'll say portfolio or recent project. I'm going to grab the portfolio list, which is the menu, right, that has the articles. Okay, so we give that a class of portfolio underscore list. I'm going to display that to be grid, and the grid template columns is going to be repeat, autofill, min max, 17 rem, and then 1 fr. Wait a minute. Okay, so this is what we have. But then I'm going to, yeah, I'm going to have a gap of 5 rem between them. Okay, so there we are. I'm going to, I think that should be enough. Let me go ahead and grab the portfolio item itself. So portfolio item, I'll set the background color gray 100. Right, I'll go ahead and set a border radius to be radius 4. I'll set overflow to be hidden, of course, and I'm going to have a hover effect, so I'll have a transition here of the variable transition. Okay, now I'm going to target the same portfolio item again and have the hover. So on hover, I just want to have a box shadow. Okay, so on the x-axis is going to be 0, the rerem for the y-axis, so it will be coming down, or it will be down the card, and I'll have a blur of 3 rem and a spread of -2 rem. So a negative spread is basically a shrink of 2 rem. I hope that makes sense. And I'll have a color of color gray 200. Lastly, I'm going to have a cursor, and I'm going to set that to be default. All right, so once I hover, we have a subtle shadow right here. Cool. All right, now I'm going to target the image. So portfolio item image, I'll give that a height of 13 rem, border radius of radius 4, overflow of heading, box shadow 0, 2 rem, 1 rem, negative 1 rem, and I'll do color gray 300. I'll do transition of transition, and I think that's it. Okay, perfecto. Now I'm going to grab the content. Remember we had portfolio item content, okay, which has, you know, the title, which is an H4, the description, and the call to action button. Okay, so let's target that, and I'm going to just give a padding of 1.4 rem for the top and bottom, and then 1 rem for the left and right. I'll save that, and that's what we have. Now I'm going to target the paragraph inside the content, so content and then the p tag, and I'm going to say margin of 0.7 rem, 0 on the left and right, and then 1.5 for the bottom. Okay, cool. And I'm going to target the div that wraps around these two buttons. Okay, so let me go ahead and target the CTA, and I'm going to display that to be flex, align items to the center, and I'll have a gap of 1 rem. All right, so we are getting somewhere, and I think the last thing I want to do here is to just increase the size of the icons inside of the link. Okay, so portfolio CTA, and I'm going to target the I, and I'll just set font size to be 1.3 rem, and there we have it. Maybe 1.2 should be enough. I guess that's even too big, so 1.1. Yeah, that should be perfect. All right, so that is it for our portfolio item. You know, the description here for the title is not long enough. That was why I wanted to add, you know, some dummy, you know, text to fill it up. But on your actual website, I don't think you'll be using any dummy text, so this is good. Okay, that's enough. Okay, so you should be able to navigate to the different. Wait a minute, why is that not working? Okay, so I have a problem. Portfolio, perhaps I did not spell that right. Yep, portfolio. Okay, so now, yeah, perfect. All right, so that is it for the portfolio. And notice that, you know, once we click, the active link isn't changing style. Okay, and so I should have done this already once we styled the floating navigation, but I forgot. So what I'm going to do is to, you know, ignore this, and then once I'm done styling everything, I'll go on to actually make the active link work. Okay, to put the style on the active link. All right, so we are done with the portfolio section, and so let's move on to the next section, which is the testimonials section. So I'm going to come here and I'll say testimonials. I'll have this in a section, and I'll give this a class of testimonials. And since we have a link that leads here, I'll have an ID as well of testimonials. Okay, so you are not restricted to having only one. You can have a class and an ID on one element. I'm going to have my container class, and I'll have testimonials container as well. And then I'll have an H2. I'll say testimonials. Actually, I'm going to put this in the section header. Okay, so I'll have a header with a class of section header, and then I'll have the H2, and below that I'll have these my clients testimonials, or this what my clients say about my work. I'll say this is what my clients say about me and my work. That should make more sense. I'll have an ordered list with a class of testimonials list. I'll have a list item with a class of testimonials, or testimonial, sorry. And here I'm going to have my first testimonial. So I'll first have the image of the person who, is giving the testimonial. So testimonial image, and then I'll get into my assets and grab an avatar of the person, or an image of the person. I'll have a span where is going to have the stars the person gave. Now, one thing is, in the beginning I did not include you know what, okay, once again, as you know, I already said I finished creating the entire website, and because of the corrupted videos or the recordings, I had to recreate this. Okay, so as you can see, I have the fill CDN for the first 4 icons included, but in your case you perhaps don't have it. So just come to first 4 icons, click on get started, and earlier we only copied the first link, which is the regular icons, but make sure you include this as well, which is the fill. And that is because the star that I'm going to use in is the fill star. Okay, so just choose fill, and you can actually use this star right here. Okay, so once you do, you can copy that, come into your HTML, and you can have that. And I need 5 stars, so I'll just duplicate this 4 more times, and that should be good. All right, so you can see we have the stars. Okay, so I'll come back here, and below the span I'm going to have a paragraph, and this should say exactly what the person said. And I'm just going to remove some of these. I just cut from here to here perhaps, and I'll have this in quote, and that should be it. Okay, below the paragraph I'm going to have an H5, and that should say the name of the person. And lastly, I'm going to have a small tag which will have the occupation of the person. Okay, so that is my first testimonial, and so let's take a look. Let me just click to get to the testimonial. So this is what we have, and so as usual, I'll just go ahead and grab what I have from the finished project. In your case, just duplicate this li multiple times and then make changes to have different testimonials. Okay, but in my case, I don't want to make this video too long. I'll just go ahead and paste what I have just so we can proceed. So I'll just paste all the testimonials I have, and I'll come back to the page. This is what we have. Perfect. All right, so now let's get into the CSS and actually make sure this looks good. Testimonials. I'll grab my testimonials list. So testimonials list, and give it a width of 100%. I'll have a height of 28 rem, and I'll set overflow to be hidden. And lastly, I'll give it a position of relative. Okay, so we are basically seeing nothing now, but let's go ahead and proceed. I'll grab the before pseudo elements. Okay, so testimonial list, I'll grab the before pseudo elements, and that'll just be a color here and here, which is going to make this look like a transition, okay, from this background, and it'll you are going to see what I'm talking about. So you're going to see what I'm talking about. So let's just proceed. I'll have a content of empty string. I'll display block. I'll give it a width of 100%, a height of 100%, a position of absolute, and yeah, absolute, z index of 1, background, and it's going to be a linear gradient. Okay, so I'll do 90 degrees and I'll use the color gray 100, and then I'll go transparent. Come on, transparent, another transparent, another transparent, transparent, another maybe 5 transparent. Yep. So two more transparent, and lastly one more transparent. Perfect. And lastly the same color at the beginning, which is color gray 100. All right, so I'll save this, and this is what we have. And that's because I'm going to have a scroll animation of the testimonials, and I do not want them to just cut off right here. I want them to just fade slowly, and when they are coming into, I just want them to fade slowly in. I hope that makes sense. All right, so that's the before. Now let's proceed and start the testimonial itself. So testimonial, I'm going to give that a background of color gray 0. I'll have text align to center. I'll give a padding of 1.5 rem, a padding top of 3.5 rem. I'll do border radius of radius 5. I'll do font size of 0.9 rem. I'll do width of 16 rem. I'll do a position of absolute. I'll do a top of 2.5 rem, a left of 100%, and I need an animation. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to go ahead and create the animation, or the keyframe, sorry, and I'm going to call this animate testimonial. Okay, and this is just going to go to a left of -16 rem. That's all I need here. So I just copy this keyframe and I'll say animation. I'll paste the keyframe. I want the duration to be 30 seconds. So I'll make it linear and infinite. Infinite, yeah. All right, so now we have a scroll animation right here, as you can see. But one thing is, the testimonials are all displayed absolute, so they are stacked on top of each other. Okay, so let's just proceed and continue with the styling. I'll just go ahead and finish up with the styling real quick, and then I'll work on the individual testimonial cards. Okay, so I'll have my testimonial list. On hover, actually on hover, I want to get the testimonial itself. So the testimonial list, on hover, I want the animation to stop, right? So if I hover over the testimonial list, I want the animation to stop or to pause. So on hover of the testimonial list, I am going to grab the testimonial card and I'll say animation play state, and I'll set that to paused. So right here, there's the behavior I want. Okay, so if anyone wants to pause to read the testimonial, then they can pause and read it by just hovering over the testimonial list. Okay, right now let's come back and I'm going to grab the image. So testimonial image, I'll give that a width of 5 rem, and I'll set aspect ratio to be 1:1. I'll do margin inline of auto. I'll have a border radius of 1.7 rem. I have an overflow of heading. I'll set position to be absolute. I'll give a top of negative 2 point. You know what? I'm going to do negative 2.5 rem, and I'll set a left to be 50%. And once you set a left to 50%, you have to transform, and then translate on the x-axis negative 50% of the width of the testimonial image in this case, right? I'll do border radius 0.5 rem. Actually, I'll do a border of, and because I'm having a border of 0.4 here, I'm going to reduce this to 0.3, or sorry, 2.3 rem. Okay, so I'll do solid color gray 0 for the border. And lastly, I'm going to have a box shadow of 0 for the x-axis, 2 rem for the y-axis, 1.5 rem for the blur, negative 1 rem for the spread, so in this case 1 rem for the shrink, and I'll do color grade 300. All right, now I think the last thing I want to do is to style the let me come back. Okay, so this is what we have. The last thing I want to do is to have some space down here between the testimonial itself and the name of the person, and also give the stars a golden color. Okay, so I'll get the testimonial, expand I, which is the icon, the star icons, and I'll say gold. And lastly, I'll target the testimonial paragraph, and I'll say the margin should be 0.5 rem for the top, 0 for the left and right, 1.2 rem for the bottom, font weight of 500, and that should be it. Perfect. So now what I want to do is to give different delays, or put different delays on the individual testimonial cards. Okay, as I said, they are all stacked on top of each other. So this right here that you see is the last testimonial. Okay, so I'm going to target the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and then give them different delays. Okay, and I'm actually going to give them negative delay. So if you have a negative delay on an animation, that means you are giving it a positive forward. So if we put an animation of 5 seconds on any card, the animation is actually going to be fast forward 5 seconds instead. I hope that makes sense. So wherever the animation or the card should be 5 seconds in is where it's going to start. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually do this, and that should be clearer than me talking. So I'll get the testimonial, and I'm going to select the nth of type, and I'll select the first one, and I'll have an animation delay of negative 24 seconds. So once I save, come back, this is what we have. Okay, actually, yep, let me just proceed and give the delays I want. And in case in case the width that you gave to your testimonial is different, then these values have to be adjusted. Okay, so don't be so strict on the values that I'm giving here. I actually played around with these values before I got the perfect values. So the second one here, I'm going to make this 18 or negative 18, and it's going to be negative 12, and it's going to be negative 6. And okay, so of course I need to make sure I'm working this well. Okay, so the fifth one is going to be 0. So actually I don't need to even target this one. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and choose the sixth one and do 6. So 6 seconds for the sixth one. Then I'll save, and now we should have a perfect scroll animation. And once we hover, we can, pause it to actually read the actual testimonial or whatever we have here. And once we remove the cursor, it scrolls. Okay, and it scrolls infinitely, right? And that is it for this testimonial section. All right, it is beautiful to look at, but we have to proceed. And so let's proceed to the next section of our web page, and that will be the contact. So I'll say contact. I'm going to have this in a section as well. Of course, we need to give this section an ID of contact. I'm going to have my container and contact container class. I'm going to have an article and a form. Okay, so the article is going to be the left side, just like we've been splitting, you know, left, right, so far. And the form is going to be the right side. Okay, so I'll have an article. And I'm not going to give this any class, so I'll just have an H3. I'll say contact me. Below that, I'll have a paragraph, and I'll say click or tap on any of the social media icons below to message me directly. You can also fill the form if you prefer that. That is it for the paragraph. Below that, I'm going to have a menu with a class of contact menu. And then I'm going to have a link, and this link, on click of it, I want to actually have anyone who clicks on it to directly get into my WhatsApp chat. Okay, so once you click, you come directly into my chat to actually message me. I hope that makes sense. So whoever is clicking on this link can chat me directly on WhatsApp without having to copy my number, save it before chatting me. Okay, so I have https://wa.me and then / your phone number, and this is my actual phone number. All right, so that is it. And of course, if you want, you can give this a target of blank and also a rel of no opener, no referrer. Okay, now in here I'm going to have a span which is going to wrap around an icon. So just go ahead and copy or grab WhatsApp icon. So WhatsApp, if you want, you can use the fill or the regular, whichever. I'm going to use the regular in this case, so I just paste that. And below the span, I'm going to have an H5, and that will say WhatsApp. And below the H5, I'm going to have a small tag, and I'm just going to have the number once again. All right, so that is one link. I just have to duplicate this twice to have the two links that I want to have here. And the second one here, on click, your visitors should be able to message you via mail. Okay, so they don't have to copy your email address. They can just tap this link and your email is going to be populated directly. Okay, so this here, right? So this right here should be your email. So once they tap on the link, the to field of the email is going to be populated. So they'll just have to enter the email body for them to send you an email. And that should be it. Okay, of course here I have to change this to be an envelope, so I'll just copy and then paste that. Oh, I hit copy again, so Control V. Perfect. And lastly, I want to have a thing what is a iMessage. That's the last one, and that is https://m.me/ and then your handle, your Facebook handle. So whatever your handle is, I personally do not have a Facebook account, so I don't have a handle, but if you do, you can have your handle here. And once they tap or click this link, they should be able to chat you directly via Facebook Messenger. So I'll say Messenger, or maybe FB Messenger, and you can have your handle here. And I think that's it. Okay, I just need to change the logo to messenger right here. Perfect. All right, so that is it for the article. Now we have to work on the form. And so right below the article, I'm going to have a form, and I don't need any action. I don't need an action for now. I'll have a div though, a div with a class of form controller. I have a label inside of that, and this will be the name, and I'll say name. I have an input with the ID that should match the 4 of the label. Okay, so ID of name, and maybe a placeholder of name, and that's it for our first form controller. I'll duplicate this twice. The second one will be email, so I'll do email address, and lastly I'll have message and message. You know what, this should actually be a text area. Okay, so text area, I'll give this a placeholder of message and an ID of message, of course, and that's it. I'll save and come back just to check what we have so far. Okay, so there's it. Now I'll go ahead and have a button, so I'll say button, and I'll make this submit, so a type of submit, and let's actually give this a btn and primary class, and that should be it. So I'll say submit. Okay, so I'll save this, come back to our page, and this is what we have. Of course, we should hop into our CSS to make sure this looks good. So that will be what, contact. I'll grab the contact container and I'll display that to the grid template columns, 1FR. Okay, good. I'll have a gap of 10 rem, and that should be it for the container. Now I'll grab the menu, so contact menu, and I'll display that with flex, but of course the flex direction here is going to be column. I'll have a gap of 1.5 rem, margin top 3 rem, and that should be it. I'll grab the contact container article P, and the margin top will be 0.5 rem. Perfect. Now grab the contact menu and the link inside of it, and I'll display that with flex. I'll align items to the center. I'll have a gap of 1.2 rem, and I'll give it a width of fit content. Perfect. I'm going to grab the span, which has the icon, so contact menu and the span. I'll give that a width of 3 rem, aspect ratio of 1:1. I'll do background, color primary, display grid, place items of center. I'll do border radius 50%. I'll do color grade 0, font size 1.3 rem, and that's it. Okay, I'll do radius 3. Let me check. Yeah, perfect. That's how I want it. All right, now let's proceed. I'll grab the H5. Okay, I'll grab this H5 right here. So contact menu, H5. I'll give it a margin bottom of 0.7 rem. Right. Did I not display flags? Wait a minute. Right here. The link should be displayed flags, right? Oh, it shouldn't. Oh, you know what? I'm going to put this in a div. Okay. I'll do same here. And I'll do same here as well. Okay, I don't even need to give it any class, right? So this is how I want it to be, like this. Okay, perfect. To the form, I'll target the form, and since that's the only form on the entire website, I'll just be more specific. And since that's the form on the website, that's why I'm using the element selector. So display of flex, the flex direction is going to be column and a gap of 1 point. I'll just do 1 rem. I'll save, and that's what we have. Now I'm going to target the input and the text area. So form input and the form text area, and I'm going to have a background of color gray 100, a width of 100%, pattern 1 rem, size none, border radius 2. Okay, so I'll save that, and that's what we have. Now I'll target the label. So form control, I'll just do form and then the label, simple as that. I'll give that a margin of 0.5 rem, 1 rem for the left and bottom, and I'll display inline block. Okay, so that's what we have for the form as well. All right, so I think that is it for the form. Now this form of course doesn't work yet, but then I have a video that you can follow to actually make any form on your HTML website work. Okay, where you can actually receive whatever message is sent here, you can receive that in your email. Okay, so you can I'll leave a link to that video, and you can watch that video to actually implement and to actually make sure this form works. But I'm not going to waste time on that. But then right here, once your visitors visit the website and click on the WhatsApp, they can message you directly. I haven't signed in my WhatsApp, and that is why I just had the WhatsApp app, and that is why I didn't enter the chat. Okay, but in your case, they will enter the chat and directly message you with no stress. Same for the email, and lastly for iMessage. So everything here is working. I don't want to waste time on the form here, and so let's just proceed to the last part of this web page, and that is the footer section right here. So let's go ahead and work on that. So I'll say footer. I'll put this in a footer tag, and I'm going to have a container. Okay, and in here I'm going to have a UL or an ordered list with, I'll just paste this. Okay, so I just have an ordered list with a class of footer size map, and this just has links to the different sections of the web page. Okay, and we've done this before, so I don't want to waste any time here. And below this unordered list, I'm going to have another unordered list, which is going to have the socials, right? And we've done this already as well in the main header. So I just have, you know, socials here, or the social media icons. And in your case, of course, you should have the href or the link to your actual social media that match the icon here. So we have YouTube, LinkedIn, GitHub, and Twitter or X. All right, so that is it. And now below the div, that's below the container, I'm going to have a small tag, and I'll actually give this a class. So copyright, that's a class. Say document.query selector, and I'll grab the copyright. I'll do .inner HTML should be equal to, then I'll paste this. Okay, so now we should have that. All right, so copyright EGATOR tutorials 2025. Okay, so with this right here, that's the new date, get full year. With this, when we enter 2026, I don't have to come back to change that. Okay, it is automatically going to update that for me. All right, and I probably shouldn't have the full stop here, so I just remove that. Maybe I should format this well for you to see that clearly. And that is it. Okay, so that's it for the HTML for the footer section. Now let's go to the CSS to actually make sure it is styled as well. I'll grab the footer and then give it a pattern top of 5 rem. I'll grab the footer container, so footer and then the container, and I'll give that a display of flex. I'll align items to the center, and I'll say justify content to be spaced between. I'll get the footer sitemap. I'll display flex and have a gap of 3 rem. Now I'll have this footer sitemap link, and I'm going to change the color to be color gray 900. And you know what, I probably don't need this because all the links have that color already. Yep, so I'll just remove that. I'll grab the footer socials, okay, and I'll display that with flex and have a gap of maybe 1 rem, and align items to the center as well. Okay, so there we have it. And now I'll grab the links inside of the footer socials. So footer socials, I'll grab the link, and I'll have a background color gray 0. I'll give a color gray 900. So var, I'll do display of grid, place items, center. I'll have a height 2.4 rem. I have aspect ratio 1:1, transition of the variable transition, and a border radius of 0.7 rem. Okay, there we go. Finally, I want to have a hover effect for the socials link. So footer socials, the link, I'm going to have a hover effect, and I'll give that a color of color gray 0 and a background of color gray 900. Now I'll target the footer copyright, and well, yeah, so footer and then the copyright. I'll give that a background of color gray 200. I will display that to be block, our text align to the center. I'll give it a margin top of 5 rem and a padding of 1.2 rem for the top and bottom, and then 0 for the left and right. So I save, and that's what we have. Okay, so I think that is it for the entire web page. Maybe there are a few things we need to correct before I get to the social media. Of course, as I said, we need to make sure once we click to go to any section, we should make the link of that section active. Okay, so we'll work on that using JavaScript. But that aside, I think we are done with the entire web page on desktop. Of course, that's how it looks on dark mode or in dark mode. Okay, the theme, the testimonial section is working as well. Perfect. So basically, we are going to get all the links inside of the navigation. Okay, and once we get that, we are going to add event listener, a click event, and we go on from there. Okay, so let's come back into our JavaScript. Maybe I should do that right at the top. Let me have the nav menu, and that'll be document.query selector all, because we are selecting multiple elements and we want the nav and the links inside of it. So every link inside of the navigation, that's what we are getting right here. So once we get them, we are going to go ahead and loop through. So I'll say for each item, I'm going to run this function. And so in here, for each item, I'll say item.add event listener. This will be a click event, and I'll run this function right here. So once we click on any of the links, I just want to add a class list of active. So a class list.add, and I'm adding active, which has the styles of blue background with the white icon. Okay, so once I do that, come back here and click on any of the links, you can see that we have the blue background. Okay, but one thing is, it is not being removed from the previously clicked links. Okay, so to reset, I'm going to have another function up top, and I'll call this remove active class. Come on, remove active class, and that will be a function. Of course, I'll say nav menu dot for each, and for each item I want to run this function, and here I just want to remove the active class. Okay, so class list dot remove, and I'll remove the active class. Now I have to remove the class from all the links before I actually put it on the link that is being currently clicked. I hope that makes sense. So with this, once I come back, of course we have it on the default link, which is the home, but once I click on any link or any other link, then that link is what gets the active style, as you can see. Okay, so we are done with that, and I think this is self-explanatory, but I'm going to leave a comment. Yep, so that should be it, guys. That should be it for that functionality, and that's actually all we need to do here in the JavaScript file. So I'll just close that up and come into my CSS. We are going to work on the media queries. Now you can proceed to actually make this responsive. So you can right click on your page, go to inspect, and once you do, you can select this right here. Okay, you may not have it selected, but just select that and choose any tablet. Okay, I'm going to use iPad to actually see how this web page looks on an iPad. And as you can see, we can improve this. Okay, we can make some adjustments to make sure this looks way better than we have here. All right, so let's come back to our code. That's the CSS. I'll put this on the right side. Let me shrink this a little bit more. Yep. And I'll say media queries. Come on. Media queries for tablets. So I'll say at media, and I'll do a maximum width of 960 pixels. Okay, so anything from 960 pixels and below is going to have these styles that we are going to have in here. So I'll set my body font size to be 1 rem here to make it a little bigger. You know, for the desktop version, the body had a font size of 0.9 rem. That's what I set it to be. But here I'm changing it to 1 rem. Now let's get a container and change the width to be the variable container width MD, which stands for medium. So now you can see the left and right, you know, it's not as big, or the space on the left and right is not as big as it used to, right? I'm going to get all the sections and give them a padding block, meaning padding on the top and bottom. I'm going to do 6 rem. And once again, my apologies for any background sounds, you know, background noises. I'm not in the most silent neighborhood, so just bear with me here. Let's just try and finish this up quickly. I'll grab the section header and give that a width of container width MD as well. And I'll grab the main header here. So main header, I'll grab that and give that a height of 70 for viewport height. Okay, perfect. I'll grab the paragraph inside of the main header. So main header and then the P tag. I'll give that a width of 100%. That's it. I'll go ahead and grab the theme button as well, and I'll give that a right of 5%. Okay, since the container now has a width of, you know, container width MD, which is I think 90%. Okay, so let me confirm that real quick. Okay, right here, so 90%. That is why I'm setting the right for the theme button to be 5%. Okay, so that should, you know, come right here and be right at the edge. All right, now let's proceed and grab the header socials. So I'll say header, come on, header socials, and I'm going to display that to be none. I don't want it here. I'll grab the about, because I think I'll go on to the about section because I think we are done here. So let's grab the about container, and here the grid template columns is going to be 1FR. Perfect. And I'll reduce the gap to be 3 rem. Okay, I think that should be enough. Oh, you know what, I'm going to reduce the image here a little bit. Of course, if you want, you can leave the image as it is, but I'll grab the about left and give that a width of 60 viewport min. Okay, so in this case, the viewport width is the viewport min, right? So I'm just trying to get 60% of that, right? And let me actually do margin inline of auto to bring that to the middle. Perfect. That's exactly how I want it. I think that is all. Now let's move on to the process. So process container, I'm going to do grid template columns of 1FR and a gap of 3 rem. Okay, so there we have it, exactly how I want this to be as well. And maybe I should grab the process list and have a gap of 2 rem. Okay, did I even That did not do anything, right? Am I tripping? Or maybe 1.5. Yeah, 1.5 is perfect. All right, now let's get to the portfolio. So I'll grab the portfolio list and I'll do a gap of 2 rem. I don't really have anything to do here beside the gap that I want to reduce. Okay, and wait a minute. Wait a minute, guys. No, I'm going to give the general container a background of red just to see something real quick. Container, guys, my bad. Okay, so now everything is aligned how I want them to. Okay, perfect. All right, I think that is all for the project section or the portfolio section. I'm not sure. Maybe, yeah, that's it, guys. But now here for the testimonials, of course, you can go ahead and actually just adjust the delays for each of these testimonials, right? But in my case, I'm just going to stop the animation here on the tablet. Okay, so on tablet, I just want to grab the testimonial list or the testimonials list. I'll give that a display of grid. I'll do grid template columns of repeat, auto fit, main max of 15 rem, so a minimum of 15 rem and maximum of 1 fr, right? I'll do main height of fit content. I'll do a gap of 4 rem for the row and 2 rem for the column, and lastly I'll have a padding. Okay, a padding of, actually I'll have a padding bottom of 3 rem. Right, now I'll grab the individual testimonials, but before that I want to remove the before pseudo elements that we had for, the pseudo elements that we have that makes this disappear from the edges, right? I'm going to set that to have a background of transparent, and that should be it. Okay, now I want to grab the testimonial itself. So each testimonial should now be positioned relative. Okay, so now this is what we have, and I think this is actually I think this is actually cool. So you can be creative and actually, play around to have something. Okay, so now this is messing up. It's all about the delays, guys. The delay you set on the testimonials, you can just play around with them and then come up with something more creative. Okay, but for now, let's proceed, and I'll have the animation set to none. Okay, I don't want any animation here. I'll also say the left should be 0 and the width should be fit content. All right, so now this is what we have. Okay, now I commented the background here. I commented that out. That is why we have the fading on the left and right. But I still think this is cool. Okay, I still think this is cool. Perhaps I should leave it. I'm not sure. Let's see, this is how it looks. Okay, so I'll just bring that back. Okay, so that is it for the testimonial section. Let's move on to the contact. So I'll say contact container, and here I'll set the grid template columns to be 1 fr and a gap of 3 rem. And lastly, I'll just work on the footer slightly. Okay, so right here I'll grab the footer sitemap and say the gap should be 1 rem. All right, perfect. So that is it for the the tablet version of the website. As you can see, everything is looking perfect. Of course, we can check out the dark theme as well. Everything is looking exactly as expected. And so let's move on to the mobile phone. So you can choose whatever phone you want, but in my case, yeah, maybe this should be perfect. So I just use this, and as you can see, we have to improve what we have from the tablet, or the styles we are inheriting from the tablet. Okay, we have to improve this. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'll just copy the comments and the media query from here and then set a new one. I have to be quick with this one, so I'll just grab the general container class here as well and set the width to be the variable container width SM. Okay, and I think that is 92%. I'm not sure. Yeah, 92%. Okay, so with that, what comes to mind right now is to grab the nav theme or the theme button and give that a left, or was it a right? Yeah, of 4%. Okay, that should be perfect. I'll grab the section header and set the width to be the container with SM, and I'll grab the main header. Okay, so let's scroll up and get the main header, and I'll set the minimum width to be 100 viewport height. Oh, sorry, the minimum height should be 100 viewport height. Okay, so that is what we have. And now I'm going to grab the image, this image right here. So main header image, and I'm going to give it a margin top of 3 rem. I'll go ahead to grab the main header paragraph. So main header P, I'll set the width to be 100%. And I think that's it for, what? Yeah, I think that's it for the, I'll bring this down for you to just follow the structure we already have. Perfect. Maybe I should, yeah. All right, so let's proceed to the next section, which is the about section right here. And of course, we do have horizontal scroll, but we are going to get rid of that once, but it is going to go away once we style this correctly. Okay, so I'll select the about left, which has the image, right? And I'm going to give that a width of 100% of its parent. Okay, so now this is what we have. I'm going to grab the, I think that's it for the about. Okay, that should be enough. I don't have any changes to make, so I'll grab the process and even grab the unordered list, and I'll say a gap of 1.5 rem. Okay, so I have process I'll also grab the process li. So process, I'll grab the li, and the flex direction in this case is going to be column. I'll align items to the center. Actually, I'm going to align items to be flexed that. Okay, all right, so that is what we have. I'm going to have a background of color gray 0 and have a padding of 1 rem and a border radius of border radius of radius 4. Okay, so that's what we have so far. Now I want to grab the H1 here. Okay, so process LIH1. I'm going to give that a width of, width of 4 rem. You know, it's too big here, so a width of 4 rem should be good, and I think that should be it, right? Yeah, that should be it, guys. We can move on to everything. Here looks pretty good, so I'll just go on to the contact. Also looks good, so I'll just move on to the footer, guys. So let's get to the footer and have the container, or select the container, and this is what is causing the horizontal scroll. So we can just go ahead and say the flex direction here should be column. And once I do that, you can see I no more have the horizontal scroll. I'm actually dragging to the left and right, but I no more have the horizontal scroll. I just want to have a gap of 1.5 rem. And lastly, we can work on the sitemap here as well. So I'll grab the footer sitemap, and the flex direction here is going to be column. I'll align items to the center. I'll give margin bottom of 2.5 rem, and lastly I'll have a gap of 2 rem. Okay, all right, so I'll save this, and this is what we have now at the footer. All right, so everything is looking exactly as we want it. Everything looks clean. On light theme as well, of course, we can use our floating navigation, and everything looks exactly as expected. All right, so that is it. Now we have to go ahead and actually deploy this and make it available on the internet. Now let's go ahead and put our website on the internet. And to do so, of course, here we have the website files, the asset folder, we have the index HTML, main.js, and then style.css. Okay, and so I'm going to close this. So this right here, this folder, is what we are going to put on the internet. And to do so, go ahead and right click on the folder and compress that folder. Okay, so just compress it. I have mine compressed here, and so this is what I'm actually going to upload on my server. So go ahead and log into your Hostinger Edge panel. And once you do, you're going to see something very similar to this. Just go ahead and select business web hosting. And once you do, go ahead and make sure your domain is selected. If you have multiple domains, then you have to go ahead and select the particular domain you want to, upload the website files on. But in your case, you probably have only one domain, so that should be the domain selected by default. So right here, I'm going to click File Manager. And here we are. Okay, so our website files should be inside of the public_HTML folder. What you have here is the default file that you get when you register a domain. So if we visit the website right now, this is what we have currently. And what we want to do is to actually upload our own website, or have our own website here. So go ahead and select this file right here and delete it or trash it. And once you do, you should have a clean slate here. And so go ahead and click this right here, upload. And we are going to choose file because we have our folder compressed. That's why I'm choosing file. And mine is on the desktop. Okay, my compressed file is on the desktop. And I'm just going to scroll down to select it right here. That's the compressed file. Just double click it and it should be uploaded right here. Okay, so I have it here. I'm just going to go ahead, select it, and I'm going to extract the file. And I'm going to do dot here, meaning the file should be, meaning the files in the zip should be extracted here. Okay, so I'll just click extract, and the folder has been extracted. So I'm going to delete the compressed file that I had before, and now I'll enter the portfolio folder and select everything in here and move it up. Okay, I'll move it back into the public underscore HTML. Right, if you take a look at the public HTML, that is where the portfolio folder is. But we do not want a folder in here, but rather we want the actual files. Okay, the actual structure that we had, it should be what is inside of the public underscore HTML. So go ahead and move that back into the public underscore HTML, and here we have it. So now this portfolio folder should be empty. So go ahead and select that and actually delete it. Of course, you can leave it in here because it's not going to cause any problems, but you want to have the exact folder structure or the exact structure that you had inside of the portfolio, folder that you had locally on your desktop. Okay, it should be the exact same structure in the public underscore HTML. So now if I visit the website, okay, so as you can see, we have everything exactly as expected. Okay, and of course, as you can see here, we have the SSL certificate, right? Everything should be working exactly as expected, including the theme functionality as well. Everything is working exactly as expected. All right, so that is it for this website. I hope you learned a lot, and I look forward to seeing you in the HTML and CSS course.